Hello, this is Pam. We're going to get started right away. Today we're going to be talking about how to prevent Lyme disease. And if we haven't met yet, my name is Pam Bartha and I'm the author of Become a Wellness Champion and the founder of Live Disease Free. And we are heading into spring, and this is the time where the ticks are coming out and mosquitoes are starting to hatch. So it is real, and we do know that Lyme disease is becoming epidemic, not just with us, but also with our pets. So how can we truly prevent Lyme disease when it's becoming such an epidemic, not just in Canada, United States, but in many different countries? So today, the topic is Lyme disease, how to prevent it. And let's first talk a little bit about what Lyme disease is, because it's not just one bug. It is a collection of different microbes. And before we get started, I just want to say hello to a few people. Hi, Troy. Hi, Antoinette. Hi, Michael. You guys can hear me, I'm sure. Awesome. So with Lyme disease, it is caused by a group of infections. And you may have heard of Borrelia, which is actually the traditional Lyme microbe, but there are others. So there's Borrelia, Bartonella, Babesia, Ehrlichia, Rickettsia, and several others of these. It's kind of like a collection of microbes that cause Lyme disease. And how are they transmitted? How do we get Lyme disease? Well, we can get Lyme disease through any biting insect. So that would include not just ticks, but also mosquitoes. And it would also include any biting insect. So maybe fleas on your cat. It could also be horseflies. So sometimes we go out into nature and there's beautiful lakes, but these horrible big horseflies that chase us. Horseflies, fleas, as we mentioned, ticks, and any other biting insect. So the key is that we have to understand it's not just ticks that can make us sick. And there have been estimates that up to 80% of mosquitoes carry Borrelia, and some of the others, we call them vector-borne infections. So traditionally it was called Lyme disease, but now we call it vector-borne infections because they are linked with a group of microbes, bacteria and small parasites that come to us through biting insects. So anytime we get bitten, it could even be spiders. So there's lots of different biting insects. So that is how we get it. It can really devastate a person's life. It can just completely put us out of commission. It can cause an array of neurological symptoms. And with the work that I do as a health coach and educator, working with the wellness champions, we attract a lot of people that suffer with multiple sclerosis and other types of neurological diseases. And very often, this is one of the types or groups of infections that we have to clear in order to get well. So today, what we're going to talk about is not just the traditional approach to preventing Lyme disease, where yes, it's important to try to avoid getting bitten, but truly, how can we avoid it and still enjoy the beautiful outdoors? So while I'm talking, I want you guys to put in your questions. Number one, have you been tested for Lyme disease? And if you have been tested, then did you get a positive test result? Because most people don't. Most people, they believe they have Lyme disease, or their doctor does, and they are tested and it comes back with a false negative. And we'll talk more about even a positive test result. It doesn't mean we have to have full-blown Lyme disease, because I know people that have been tested, they test positive, but they're symptom-free. How are they doing that? So the first thing is, how do we avoid Lyme disease? And as I mentioned, this is really a big topic because there is an epidemic of Lyme disease in North America and in parts of Europe too. So this is what the CDC has said in 2013, is that there's at least 300,000 new cases of Lyme disease every year in the United States. And that was 2013, and it is higher now. So over 300,000. That's huge. And as I mentioned, we're seeing that a lot of our pets now are becoming sick with Lyme disease also. So what are the symptoms of Lyme disease? Like if we are bit by one of these vector-borne, one of these insects that bite, what are the symptoms we could experience? Well, we could get a bullseye rash, but that is usually only after we have been bitten or exposed to these infections, the vector-borne infections that cause Lyme disease, 2 or more times. So the first time we're bitten by an infected mosquito or a tick, we may not show the signs of Lyme disease. But if we've been bitten the second or third time, we may. Other symptoms of Lyme disease, we may get fevers coming and going, recurring fevers. We may have a lot of pain. We may have headaches. There's all kinds of neurological symptoms that in time, as these infections that we are infected with by these biting insects, as they live with us, they move into our tissue and into our lymphatic system, and they can give us a lot of grief. Tons and tons of different neurological symptoms. So those are just a few of the bigger symptoms, but it can completely disable us. And what I see in my students when we're working with the Live Disease Free in the Academy, the wellness champions that are suffering with neurological diseases, they often have many symptoms of Lyme disease. So how can we prevent Lyme disease if it is epidemic today? And, you know, how do you avoid getting bitten by a mosquito even? Because like we can avoid the ticks for sure, but you know, how do we just live in a bubble? And so the key to preventing Lyme disease is, number one, we'll talk about how we can avoid getting bitten by these insects, I should say. So number one, when we go out, number one, avoid areas that are really full of ticks, for example, and use protective clothing for sure. So if you live in an area where there's a ton of mosquitoes, or if you live by a forest and you want to go for walks, number one, if you walk on the paths instead of cutting through the bush and through the grass, you will probably be less exposed to the ticks. But as far as the mosquitoes, just covering up. And yes, there are insect repellents, but they're usually quite toxic, and you might be able to find some really great insect repellents in health food stores or online. For example, when I go out and if I'm going to an area where there's a lot of mosquitoes, citronella, I don't mind the smell of it. It smells kind of like lemon, and that is a really great one for repelling mosquitoes. There's also a product that I haven't tried yet, but it looks good because I really like the company, and it's North American Herb and Spice, and it's called Protect. So Protect with a C and then a big X. And that is, again, a blend of essential oils that will repel different types of insects, and ticks included. So yes, we can go out, and if we're walking through grass, we could, you know, if you want, you can tuck your pants into your socks, making sure that the ticks can't get in under your clothing. Make sure that when you're done your walk, you can just examine yourself and just make sure that you and your family, that you don't have any ticks, that you didn't bring any home. I did find one on my leg one time after my son and I went for a walk. So just make sure that you check when you're done, and you can cover up, and you can definitely use some of these, especially the essential oils, because they're safe. And there is DEET, but it's definitely more toxic. But other ways that the best way to prevent Lyme disease, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, is number one, to build up your body, to build up your immune system, to build up your natural defense. Why do I say that? Well, Dr. Klinghardt is a hero doctor. He's one of my favorite hero doctors that I study under. And he has been working with chronic disease for many years, helping people to recover from all kinds of diseases. He has so many pearls of wisdom. And what he shared is that, you know, most of us have been infected with these microorganisms, with all of the Lyme type infections that I talked about. So most of us have been bitten by mosquitoes. Like if you think about it, if 80% of the mosquitoes are infected, then chances are, if you've been bitten by mosquitoes, you've probably been infected with these microbes that cause Lyme disease at some point in your life. So we can either hide in a bubble, hide in our home, or we could just build ourselves up and make ourselves strong, because what he has observed is that if we've pretty much all been exposed to Lyme disease, only 25% of the population is actually showing symptoms of Lyme disease. So what is the difference between the people that are sick with Lyme disease and the people that are healthy? Well, it really boils down to, number one, having a strong immune system. So your immune system, like, we're constantly going to be introduced to different microbes, whether it's something we eat, or whether it's something in the air, or maybe it is being bitten by these insects. So our goal is to make ourselves strong. And how do we do this? Like, a lot of people think just, oh, I'm just going to do some diet and exercise. I'm going to eat healthy and I'm going to exercise and I'm not going to get sick. And there's so much more to it. So what we do in the Live Disease-Free system is we teach people how to be the director of their health. And the steps I'm going to share with you are truly the best steps to prevent Lyme disease. Because when you're healthy and strong, then your immune system is going to deal with the vast majority of infections that you're exposed to, especially the Lyme type infections. So we know that when we're dealing with the small Lyme infections, the tiny parasites and bacteria, they're the smallest microorganisms, and our body can handle them better than the bigger ones, as long as we are strong. So number one, we eat in a way that feeds the body, but does not feed bad microbes. And it also feeds the good, healthy microbes. So inside of us, if you haven't watched my masterclass training yet, I teach about how we have this ecosystem inside of us. All these microbes that are living all the way from our mouth and parts of our urinary and reproductive tract, but especially our GI tract. So we have pounds of these microbes living in our body. And in a healthy ecosystem, they are mostly health-promoting microbes. But unfortunately, many of us have been on antibiotics, and so we've wiped out our ecosystem, and we have a lot of bad microbes. And this is where we end up with fungal overgrowth, we end up with parasites, and then our immune system becomes more and more and more taxed. And then we end up being bitten by a mosquito or a tick or a horsefly, or maybe it's a flea on our cat. And then we are infected with these Lyme microbes, and then we become sick with Lyme disease. So the first thing is, let's feed our body and not feed those bad infections that we're out of balance with. Number two is to support our body. So to build our body up. And this is like looking at our basic blood work with our doctor, and whatever areas need to be supported, support them. So maybe your thyroid is low, maybe your adrenals are fatigued, maybe you have low iron, maybe, you know, there's so many different factors, low white blood count, etc. So this is where, when you build your body up and make sure that you are able to detox, you're opening up those detox pathways and you're bringing in nutrition and you're supporting the areas of your body that need it. Then we move on to looking at how out of balance we are. So this is all what we do in the Live Disease-Free system. So do we have parasitic infestations? And the vast majority of the students I work with do. So we are susceptible to Lyme disease when we are infested with worms. Why? Because they produce a lot of chemicals. It's kind of, and fungus too, and other bacteria. It's like we have our own personal chemical factory in our body, and it can make us really weak, our immune system. And so then we're susceptible to getting Lyme disease. Also, some really exciting research from Dr. Alan McDonald, and this was back in 2014 he shared, but sometimes we are infested, or infected, I should say, with parasitic, tiny parasitic worms, even from mosquitoes and ticks, and they're called microfilarial worms. And the mosquito can stick its whatever in us and be drawing blood out and infecting us with the worm. That worm goes into our blood, and they have their own life cycle, and they like to live in different parts of the body. So they like, for example, the eyes, they like to move in the central nervous system. But the problem is that those small nematodes, little roundworms, they carry their own microbiome. So they carry their own microbes. They also carry Lyme disease as part of it. So they carry their own microbes inside of their body. And when they cross the blood-brain barrier, they're actually bringing Borrelia, Lyme disease, into our central nervous system. So this is where, when we have parasites in our digestive tract, or when we have them in our blood, we have to understand that they are depositing their waste material in us, and they are infecting us with different types of other parasites, and also the vector-borne infections associated with Lyme disease. So it's pretty complex, and it's kind of like our ecosystem, when it's out of balance, then we are susceptible to all kinds of different infections, because these bad microbes that become really populated in our body, they can infect us with other things. And this is what's really exploding in science, is really how the microbes that live in our body, how they affect us in health and sickness. So the key to preventing Lyme disease is not to hide in your home and to stay out of the woods. I love nature. I absolutely love it. It's to build yourself up so that you are strong enough so that you don't get Lyme disease, you don't get cancer, you don't get multiple sclerosis, right? It's many, many different types, because all chronic disease is caused by different types of infections. So number one, feed your body. Don't feed the bad microbes, feed the good microbes. You want to promote the good microbes in your body. You want to build back your ecosystem. Number two, support the body. Look at your physiology, look at your blood work, and learn how to read your test results and build yourself up. And make sure you're detoxing well, right? Having daily bowel movements. That's a really important thing. Drinking lots of water. And there's other things you can do. Number three is to look at the symptoms you have and to start to knock back the bad microbes. And this is where people need a lot of support, because it is challenging to treat parasites. Number one, I love our practitioners, but it's really hard for them to do a stool test to find these parasites that we're dealing with. So this is where we have to find practitioners that can actually test us, and that's more done with the energy testing right now, because we don't have good tests to pick up most of the parasites. So testing and then treating, and this is where some of the very small microbes like fungus or like the small single cell parasites, they are treated well with herbs, but some of the big parasites, what we're seeing with our students, the herbs are not, on their own, are not enough to treat them. So we have to use antiparasitic drugs and layer, so it's antiparasitic drugs plus oxygen therapies plus herbs, a whole bunch of different things together, and we're getting them out. And then when you release them, they're no longer infecting you, right? And this is something that once you deworm yourself and reduce the parasites, you're going to do that at least once a year, because you see how important it is. Dr. Klinghardt would say, the more people deworm themselves, the longer they live. And that is huge. I've learned that tremendously. So really knocking back the bad, you can never sterilize yourself. You can never knock back all the bad microbes so that you're completely cleaned out of them, but you can knock them back far enough so that you're completely symptom-free, so that your immune system is strong, so that you can work out and have energy. All of those things are important. So it's, and then bringing back the good microbes, right? Knocking back the bad and bringing back the good, and building up a diverse ecosystem. So when we have many types of microbes, then there are certain microbes that will keep other ones under control. We don't even know half of what they are and who they are, but it's just bringing back diversity. And that's really super important. So it's not just knocking back the bad, or else you'll have to keep knocking them back forever, like all the time. It's like building back your ecosystem too. Building a healthy lifestyle is super important. How do we live in this world? We have to have balance. We have to get sunshine. We have to nurture our soul. We have to do all kinds of things, activity, right? To help to move the lymph around, to help to clear out the toxins, to clear out the bad microbes as they're dying, as we're getting rid of them. So building a healthy lifestyle is important. And a really big thing today to prevent Lyme disease, these are all part of the Live Disease-Free system that we teach, that I teach. The biggest thing, not the biggest, but one of the biggest things is cleaning up the environment. So we know that when we are around a lot of radiation, whether it is wireless radiation from all our wireless devices, so that could be your cell phone, it could be your router, and there's so many smart appliances now that we have in our home. It could be that there's a cell tower right out of your home. We know that it makes this radiation makes these microbes grow up to 600 times faster, according to measurements that Dr. Klinghardt has done in his lab. So this is really important to understand, because if you are exposed to a lot of radiation, it's making the bad microbes grow quicker. It's making your immune system taxed. When you get bit by a mosquito, then you are, or a tick, or horsefly, whatever, then your immune system is not going to clear those microbes like it should. Right? We have this natural defense. We have to make sure that it is strong enough to protect us. So that's really important, getting that radiation down and learning about that. And that's what we teach our students in the program, is all the sources and how to reduce it. I'm working behind technology, but I'm doing it in a safe manner. Another huge thing, so number one is that is the radiation, wireless radiation from the wireless devices, but I should also add in, it could be that you're living, and this is not as often, but it could be that you have strong electric and magnetic fields around you. Maybe you are close to these high voltage power lines, right? And if that is the case, then you have to make sure that you find a way to decrease that, and some people have to move if you're that close to it. So it's detrimental to your health, really important, but start to research it. I'm telling you about it. So another huge thing is mold in your environment. I can't tell you how many of my students that they lived in a moldy home for years before they got sick. And the vast majority of my students have a ton of symptoms of Lyme disease, of all of the Borrelia, Babesia, all of those ones. So the key is that when you live in a moldy environment, the mold is putting out toxins and you're breathing those in. Those mycotoxins are deadly and they set you up for cancer, for neurological diseases. So very often that if we want to prevent Lyme disease, we have to make sure our home is not moldy. We have to reduce the radiation around us. We have to clean up our environment with many different ways, right? Heal our gut, and this is what we teach. So the key is to do all these things, to become the director of your health, to live a proactive life, to know how to take care of yourself. And it is much more than just eating right and exercising. Those things are important, but to be honest, there are so many eating plans, and how do you know which is the right one for you, right? And it's really what feeds your body with lots of nutrition. And it does not feed the bad microbes, but it does also feed the good ones. So as we are knocking back the bad, we are bringing back the good, we are cleaning up the environment, right? We're reducing them, making sure there's no mold. We're not living in a moldy home where we've had, maybe there was water leaking at some point in time, or maybe it's the basement, etc. But make sure that your home is clear of mold because it will make you so sick. And what else is there that I wanted to share? Those are the really big ones. Oh, heavy metals, that's another huge one. So we're living in a time where we're exposed to a lot of heavy metals, and the heavy metals are, number one, they're not good for us, period, but they really, if we have a lot of heavy metals in our body, we become a breeding ground for these infections. And so detoxing heavy metals is important, and we teach people how to do that safely on an ongoing basis to reduce the heavy metals, but then how to do it safely. Like, you should be doing it ongoing because every day we're exposed, unfortunately. And I can't get into all the sources right now because we only have so much time together, but that is what I teach. So decreasing heavy metals and becoming aware of how that impacts. It's not just us being susceptible to Lyme disease, but us attracting other types of microbes, parasites, fungus, etc. So really looking back, and before I do that, I just wanted to share a couple of successes. So one student joined the Live Disease Free Academy, working through the Live Disease Free system. So she's been dealing with Lyme disease for years, and she's been working with Lyme literate doctors, and they've been using antibiotics with her. And you know, she's been working with them, and she's just not getting better. So what she did is she joined us and she started to treat the parasites first. So going through the whole system, following the eating plan, supporting the body, looking at her symptoms, and yes, she had lots of symptoms of parasites, started to address them. Passed numerous large worms, like I would say over a foot long, most of them, and many, like weekly I was getting pictures. And that's what my students do, is that they send pictures to me of what they're passing, and it excites me. It doesn't gross me out because I know that they're getting their life back. So she was infested with large worms and probably small parasites that I can't see, but it's shocking how many, and by her treating the large worms and knocking back the fungus, but especially the worms, that she just was feeling better than she had felt in years just by starting to do that. And so what Dr. Klinghardt would say is that many, or if not most, of his Lyme patients, that they are infested with parasites, and as they treat the parasites, they very often don't even have to treat Lyme disease anymore, because then their immune system is dealing with it. It's like, oh, you took enough of the load off of me, now I can do my job. That is the key. And if they still have to treat the Lyme, because if you've had it for years, then it's moved into your lymphatic system, which is your immune system, it's moved into your tissue. And so then you can treat it with the herbs and specific blends of herbs and specific preparations. But the key is then it's so much easier to treat. Otherwise, it's impossible. You could just take herbs forever. You could take antibiotics and you're still sick, as this student was. So that is the key. And that's why I understand that when you're looking at the little bacterial infections and even viruses, this is just my humble opinion, working with hundreds of students, is that you treat the biggest critters first, right? And all the other prep work that we do in the Live Disease-Free system. And then it's almost like your immune system can deal with the smaller ones, right? So the student, or I should say the people in school, back in high school, that had this horrible, viral infections, mono, for example, and they couldn't go to school, those people, if you look at their ecosystem, it's completely out of balance. They're probably infested with parasites. That's what we're seeing. And just this is what I want you to check for yourself is, do you have parasites, right? So as you are getting the parasites down, proactively, hopefully, and if not, then do it after the fact, but to get your life back, get the parasites down, get the fungus down. And then if you have been infected, like most people have with Lyme disease, you won't have the symptoms. So for example, I know someone in my family who has been tested with a really good test for Lyme disease. And she tested positive. I believe it's Bartonella and Borrelia. No, yes, Borrelia and Bartonella for sure, those two. But she has no symptoms. And that is where we want to be, is that yes, we're going to be infected with many different microbes, even ones that we don't even know about, that haven't been discovered yet. But if we do enough to not just eat right and exercise, but keep our ecosystem in balance or put it back in balance, right? And then also clean up the environment. So those big steps that I shared with the Live Disease-Free system, then you can go out in the woods like I do, and you can enjoy nature. It's so therapeutic, it's so beautiful, and not live in fear like, oh my gosh, what if I'm bitten by a mosquito? What if I'm bitten by a tick? And that's truly the way to live, right? So I'm gonna go to your questions and see if you have any questions for me. And before I go, I just wanna mention too that if you're at the place where, maybe you are living with chronic disease and you've tried so many different things to get well, and maybe you've been working with practitioners and you're like, man, or maybe you have been diagnosed with Lyme disease and you've been working for quite a while with practitioners trying to recover, then make sure to watch my masterclass training. And if you're looking for the step-by-step plan where you can learn this yourself and you can play that, you can be in the driver's seat in getting well, doing most of the work yourself. It's very cost effective. And then you know how to take care of yourself for the rest of your life. Then make sure to watch my masterclass training. It will be in the feed of this video, or it will be above the video. And then reach out to me if you're looking for the plan, because we have a plan. We're supporting many, many students from I would say close to 15 countries, or over 15, right around there, around the world, recovering from chronic disease. So again, people that have neurological diseases very often are infected with these vector-borne infections associated with Lyme disease. So all of the ones that we call Lyme disease, we now call them, you'll hear more, vector, because they come to us through biting insects, all right? That's why we call them vector-borne infections. And we can avoid it, right, by being strong inside. And that's how I've been able to live MS-free for the past 29 years. I should have mentioned that sooner because some of you don't know me. I was diagnosed with MS at the young age of 28. And by correcting my microbiome enough, I have been able to live MS-free for 29 years. And it's just a wild ride. So now I'm helping other people recover from chronic disease also. So I'm going to your questions now. All right, and to say hello to some people. Hi, Michael. You lost one of your dogs to Lyme. Yes, it's becoming a real problem. And, just on a side with pets, it's exactly the dog food that we're feeding our pets. It is so bad. You look at the ingredients and it's usually a lot of carbohydrates, and they don't eat carbohydrates. And then you look at their vitamins. Wellness champions, you know how to read labels. It's all synthetic that they're getting. They're not getting real vitamins, and their health is crashing. And then, they're susceptible to all of these different worms, etc. And I'm so sorry that you lost your Labrador to Lyme disease. Awful. Hi, Lori. You are so much stronger. Just keep treating. That's the key. You're doing an amazing job. I'm so happy. So Lori is one of the wellness champions, and she has been working on her health, and she's had huge improvements. And she's still treating infections. Hello, Marie. So the key is, Marie, make sure, I'm not sure what you mean by 9 weeks. So just make sure to reach out to us. If you are in a place where you want to recover from chronic disease, please, there are so many different things you can follow. Make sure you're following a proven system, and the Live Disease-Free system is a proven system. There are many people that have recovered from all kinds of chronic disease. So make sure to watch my masterclass training and reach out. So Kat, you cannot detox any tips. So when you say that, like with everything that I do, the work that I do, and just my logic is like, does that make sense to me that your body can't detox? Number one, your body is genetically programmed. It knows how to detox. That is true. So we have to figure out, why are you not detoxing? So sometimes what I see in my students is that if, let's say if you have a lot of, this is where I don't know much about you, but for example, if you are infested with parasites or fungal overgrowth, then sometimes when you're doing certain things, then it might be aggravating infections, and then it feels like you can't detox. That's what I see with my students. So when we stop feeding the infections, when we're dealing, and I don't know what you have for disease, but or if you have, it sounds like you have a condition of some sort, Kat, but if you, number one, stop feeding the bad microbes, people start to see symptom improvement right away. So sometimes, and this is where, in my humble opinion, you know, there's all of this genetic testing, and we can spend $6,000 to $10,000 on tests. And if we have disposable income for that, possibly, but I've talked to so many people that have spent that kind of money on different tests, and it really didn't make a difference. What really makes a difference, and I'm sure I've seen in some of Dr. Klinghar's work also, that it's really not so much our genes, because there's so many factors that can affect our gene expression, right? It's like what we eat, how we think, the microbes that live in us. So how in the world can we, you know, permanently say we've got these, you know, DNA deficits or mutations that can never be resolved? What we're seeing, what works with the students is, number one, eating in a way that you're feeding the body but not feeding those infections as much. You can't kill them with food, with decreasing, you can't starve them to death, but you definitely can start to see symptom improvement. And then supporting the body. So number one, just making sure you're having daily bowel movements and making sure that you are taking binders. And then as you start to treat the infections, but before we do that, supporting the body, and we talk about all of that. If you watch my masterclass training, I talk about all the steps. But basically, you know, getting the heavy metals down, getting the radiation down, making sure you're not living in a moldy environment, and then treating the infections. You'll see that as you take the burden of parasitic infestations, anti or fungal overgrowth, etc., you will see that you will detox like your body should. Your body is genetically programmed. It knows how to run. It knows how to produce hormones and how to detox. We just have to support it. So there's things that are interfering with its ability to do that. That's what is going on. So, hi, Yvonne. Hi, Rob. Hi, Jeff. Hi, Anthony. Any other questions here? Hi, Danielle. Hi, Allison. Hi, Olivia. All right, so I go to India every year, and mosquitoes always bite me, and you always have a relapse. So if that is the case, Serapha, if that is the case, then, or maybe it's Adam, sorry, maybe that was your last name first. Adam, if that is the case, that you kind of are getting reinfected, it tells you that inside of you, just what I mentioned before, is that you have to make yourself strong inside so that your immune system can deal with it, and then you're not going to have any symptoms. So remember, stop feeding the infections, support your body, start treating the infections that are in your body, then start to build a healthy lifestyle, clean up the environment. And when you do all those things, building up your good ecosystem again, bringing back the good microbes that protect you, then your immune system will have enough energy to deal with when you're bitten with mosquitoes, absolutely, and you won't have issues. Because remember, not everyone who's bitten by mosquitoes gets Lyme disease. Maybe 25% of people do. So that's why we have to shift ourselves out of that 25% into the 80%. That is the key. That's the best way to prevent Lyme disease. Hi, Carrie. Heavy metals is the difference, absolutely. So it's not just mercury, but aluminum is a really big one, and there's many other heavy metals. So make sure to reach out to us if you want to learn more about what we're doing for heavy metals, etc. Hi, Lori. Hi, Kat. Maureen. You've never been tested, but you grew up in a small town in Northern Ontario. Black flies in mosquito heaven, absolutely. So again, Dr. Klinghardt has shared that the vast majority of us have been infected with Borrelia, Bartonella, Babesia, Ehrlichia, Rickettsia. There's a bunch, and there's more that all travel together. And so the key is that we can't avoid it. It's part of life, being exposed to these. Hi, Debbie. Hello, Michael D. Hi, Rudy. Hi, Tanis. Hi, Oksana. Hi, Judy. See if there's any other questions. Dan, you had so many. How many of you guys have been bitten by ticks? I know one of my students, she had to take ticks off of her dog, like dogs, I should say, many, many ticks every year. And that was her job. And she ended up with MS. And again, these vector-borne infections are not the only cause of the neurological symptoms associated with MS, but they definitely do cause a lot of, or some of the symptoms for sure. Hi, Denise. Hi, Allison. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Jill. Okay, I think that is it for the questions. Thank you for posting the link for my free masterclass training. So please talk about good snacks. I've been eating too many nuts, Michael is asking. So with the snacks, like what we're doing with the eating plan is we want to get a lot of nutrition, and we want to get more calories from our fat than from carbohydrates. And of course, we're having protein throughout the day, 3 meals a day. So for myself, it's enough to have a small handful of nuts with my lunch, or sorry, my mid-morning and mid-afternoon snacks, but also things like mayonnaise. If you are a wellness champion, you can go into our wellness champion group, and there is a homemade mayonnaise recipe. But if you're not, you can look up a homemade mayonnaise recipe. So that is healthy fat. Just make sure the ingredients are right. And you can use that, you can flavor it up as a dip, so you can have that as a dip with vegetables. For snacks, honestly, it can be any food you have in the fridge. It could be a little salad, it could be a little bowl of soup, it could be anything. The key is you have to be prepared, and you have to have food in your fridge, and you have to have food on hand, for example, to make sure that you can have, so that you're not hungry, so that you don't eat nuts all the time. Because a lot of people, that when they're just starting, if they don't plan, then they just are eating nuts and nuts and nuts all day, and then they feel horrible. So the key is that you have to prepare, you have to have enough food in the fridge so you can just grab something, whatever you need to make sure that you're feeling satisfied. So where do you get the prescriptions, Carrie is asking? The prescriptions have to come from practitioners that can prescribe, but the problem is that most practitioners, this is such a new territory for them. So we've created a members area for them. We've got the protocols in there, and we are collaborating, and probably within 2 to 5 years, there will be more and more. It's not just my effort, but other hero doctors' efforts also that are trying to get this word out. But it's really because, Carrie, we have not had good tests. I personally I knew that I had parasites, but I had no idea how many worms and parasites I had until I started passing them. And that's what we help students do in the program. So it's really eye-opening. And then when my students are passing me tons and tons of pictures, it's like, oh my gosh. And so what I have really learned is that MS is mostly a parasitic infestation. And the Lyme symptoms that we have from Lyme disease is kind of because our body is so infested with parasites, and they directly cause many of the neurological symptoms, and we have fungal overgrowth, then we become susceptible to Lyme disease when we're bitten by these insects. And then we show additional neurological symptoms that are associated with the vector-borne infection. So we get all of these tons and tons of different neurological symptoms. And that is why there will never be a single cure for multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, ALS, any of these horrible neurodegenerative diseases, because it's multiple infections that are playing a role. So we're literally in the program, in the Live Disease-Free system, we're helping them to chisel the infections down. So I'd like you to think about a different way of thinking, Carrie, instead of just like, you know, where do we get these drugs? Where can we find a practitioner? Is that you have to learn how to get well in a holistic way, because that's the only way you're going to get better. The drugs are not perfect, right? And even antibiotics for Lyme, it doesn't work. Like, you have to do so many other things. And so the key is learning this skill so that you know it for the rest of your life, so that you can be like me. And I've been living 29 years free of MS because I know how to take care of myself. And then it saves thousands of dollars on healthcare costs and tons of frustration, and allowing you to live your best life. You can't afford to leave your health solely in the hands of any healthcare provider. You have to learn the skill. You have to take charge of your health. And then you, number one, get yourself back in balance, doing most of the work yourself. And then in the future, you build a team. Oh, I forgot to mention too, if you have dental infections, that's another thing that can really make you more susceptible to Lyme disease. Like if you've got, for example, sometimes we get our wisdom teeth removed, and we may end up with, or even other teeth pulled, and we have these little pockets. And then we have pockets of infection, or a rotten tooth, or a root canal. Those things can also make our immune system more suppressed. And then when we're bitten by a mosquito or a tick or a horsefly, then we end up with the symptoms of those vector-borne infections. So there are not, it's very simple, but you have to know these basic rules and basic principles so that you can, like I said, you can avoid all of the $6,000 to $10,000 worth of test results, and you know, not having to spend, like the people that I work with, many of them have spent thousands of dollars, anywhere between $100,000 to $300,000 on their health, and they're still sick. So don't go down that road. Learn this yourself and apply it, and you will get well. All right, last few questions. Hi, Tiffany. So Carrie, you have Lyme and it's a struggle. It doesn't have to be a struggle, but reach out, watch my masterclass training. And if you are looking for a step-by-step plan for you to take care, because it sounds like you've probably been doing different things, but I hope it makes sense to you that maybe you need to kind of flip your approach in a different direction. And doing all those things I shared on this call will definitely, you will get the results then. And I know that because the vast majority of the students I work with, they have these infections, and if all you have is Lyme disease, and I shouldn't say all because some people are extremely debilitated by Lyme disease, but it's, you know, with people that have MS, it's much more, right? Often, not always, but often. All right, and see if there's any last questions here. All right. So Carrie, do doctors here in BC prescribe the meds? Yes. So we have different practitioners that we are working with here. Absolutely. But it's growing. Again, it's really ground floor here right now, unfortunately. But yes, we definitely have. The nice thing about in British Columbia is the naturopaths can prescribe. And the doctors can't prescribe, because the only way they can prescribe is if they do a stool test and it shows positive on your stool test, then they can prescribe. So they'll do a stool test and nothing will show, and they'll say, I'm sorry, I can't write a prescription. But the naturopaths can do other forms of testing, and they can. But the problem is they don't know you have parasites. That's the key. And so this is where we work together as a team. Jackie, same. Our 9-year-old Bassett just recently must have died of a Lyme disease or has Lyme disease. So this is where you know, and I'm talking with one of my kids. They have a recently new dog, and it's kind of like, what do you do? Like, do you buy raw dog food, which is really expensive, but the vet bills at the other end are ridiculously expensive. But start to look for food, for dog food that has less carbs in it and hopefully has more nutrition for sure. Just kind of treat them with all the principles that you've learned in the Live Disease-Free system very similarly. And you will find that they will not be dropping with sickness of Lyme disease for sure. Hi, Jill. Hi, Jackie. I'm so sorry to hear about your 9-year-old Bassett. Okay, I think that's it for the questions. So next week, I would like to talk about another article that a study that came out. And again, it's helping to shed some light on, you know, it's important for me to talk about it, but I hope that everyone puts it into perspective. It's not like this one therapy is going to cure us of MS, but it's very helpful. It's one of the pieces of the puzzle. So I do want to bring this out, and it's really huge. All right, so we are going to be talking about a study that is showing one of the antiparasitic drugs, how it is helpful with multiple sclerosis. Again, disclaimer that it does not cure MS by itself, but it is showing in studies that it is helpful, and my students were finding that it is part of the treatment plan, absolutely, for a lot of students, that it's really helpful. So with that, I'm going to let you guys go, and I will be back on Wednesday next week at 5 o'clock Pacific. So take care and bye-bye for now.